o'clock in the morning. And we have a disclosure to read as we are social distancing through Zoom.
This is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. I'll be providing information for remote access to today's meeting, as well as procedural guidelines that will be followed for this meeting. Due to social distancing and the prohibition of a gathering of 10 or more people to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, physical access to the City Commission meeting will be restricted. In accordance with the Kansas Open Meetings Act, COMA, the meeting can be viewed live on Channel 23 and via Facebook Live, or listened to by dialing 312-626-6799 and entering meeting ID code 960-8664-8020#. That information can be found at the top of today's agenda. Guidelines for this meeting are as follows. Each member of the public, staff, or presenter is required to state the individual's name and title, if any, each time the individual begins speaking or voting, so that the individual can be identified by remote listeners or observers. Citizens that submitted comments by 8:30 a.m. today to public comments at ottawaks.gov or a staff member were given to the City Commission to be read during public comment or during discussion on an agenda item. The Commission must describe at the beginning of the meeting the process that will be used for a closed or executive meeting pursuant to KSA 75-4319 and amendments thereto.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is Mayor Tom Wygand, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. And I ask for the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Wygand.
Present.
Commissioner Kaler.
Present.
Commissioner Crowley.
Present.
Commissioner Skidmore. Commissioner Skidmore, you are on mute. I will record you as present. Commissioner Jorgensen.
Present.
Okay, all are present this morning. I want to welcome all of those who are on this call, as well as the listeners on KOFO and social media. At this time, we will say the Pledge of Allegiance and then followed by the invocation by Commissioner Kaler. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice
for all.
Is that difficult or what? Commissioner Keller, invocation, please.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mayor Wygand. Please bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today with such heaviness on our hearts and our minds. Instead of getting bogged down in the mud of the worry and fears that we may have, we should be happy and laugh and know that you are on our side. You watch over us, you protect us. We trust you, O Lord. We should not let worry keep us occupied, especially with those things that have not even happened yet. You call upon us to live every single day to the fullest. You bring us joy. We know that when we will have problems and we will be sad at times, but we also know when that happens that you are right beside us. Please bless us in all the things that we do today, all the things that we do and say today and always. In your gracious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a consent agenda, which is minutes from the May 6, 2020 regular meeting and the approval of today's agenda.
Mr. Mayor.
A motion to approve.
Commissioner Crowley here to motion to approve our consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second?
Commissioner Jorgensen seconds.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We do have public comments today. I am going to waive the time limit on those comments for this time. I understand we have two. We have Natalie and Lily that want to address the commission regarding the rally taking place Friday evening. Natalie?
Okay. I'm Natalie Maxheimer, and my address is 512 South Locust Street. So we did make a change on the time for this rally. It will begin at 6, and then it will end hopefully around 8 o'clock, so that there will still be light out and we don't have to worry about that. It will be at City Park, like we had discussed on Monday. We will begin by congregating by the Carnegie Building, and then we're hoping to do a slight march like around the block of City Park. So we would go, east down 5th Street and then turn right onto Hickory, and then go up to Park Street, where we will then have everyone gather around the band shelter, and then we'll listen to our guest speakers. So we have Chief Weingartner, Richard Jackson, community activist Richard Jackson, and then Lacey Knight. She grew up in Ottawa, and she's from the Kansas City area, and she's a leader of Black Lives Matter organization in the Kansas City area. And then we have Dorzell Owens, who is from Ottawa and is raising children in the area. We'll be speaking on that. And then we have Taya Hickman, who is the former student body president at Ottawa University.
Okay, very good.
And then because we know so many citizens, including business owners, have questions, Natalie and I would like to make it clear on what this event is and what this event is not. So this event promotes equality for all citizens. This event celebrates differences as well as commonalities. And this event is also an opportunity to empathize with members of our community. This event is a partnership with local law enforcement because we honor that they protect and they serve our community. And lastly, this event is a peaceful, family-friendly gathering. So I'd also like to go into some of the things that this event is not. So this event is not an attack on Ottawa Police Department or any other form of law enforcement. This attack is not an excuse to damage any business, residence, or community space in Ottawa. This event is not in collaboration with any sort of national organizations. It's just us and our grassroots. This event is not an attempt to divide our community at all. And this event is not an attack on the businesses and or local economy in our community.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor,
As you,
Lily, for the public record, would you please state your name and address?
Oh, yeah. So sorry. Lily Dury, and my address is 604 North Mulberry.
Thank you, Lily.
Yes, of course.
this is Mayor Tom Wygand. I'm aware, and as I'm sure you're aware, of some of the concerns of the citizenry of the people of Ottawa, that it is peaceful. And I know you've done everything possible, but I got to remind everyone, I guess, that our Bill of Rights permits peaceful assembly without permits, and that whether the city is in favor or opposed or neutral, this assembly would be able and lawful to take place in regards to that. We do, I think, as a commission, as a governing body, welcome your leadership in assuring that it is peaceful, that it is for a good cause, and that we will be safe in doing it. My concern, I think, as a person and as a mayor, is we're doing it during the COVID-19 pandemic. So my concern would be, I'd like to see a 100% wearing masks and trying to stay within a reasonable distance at this gathering. And have you made any preparations for that, or have any concerns about that?
Yeah, so we did mention and we mentioned this to everybody, we are strongly encouraging masks if people are able to bring them. And like I said at our last meeting, we do have a limited number of masks. So I have 100 disposable masks right now, and then I think Chief Weingartner said that they have some that they're willing to give us. So I plan on getting those handed out to people that don't have masks, because the last thing we'd like to do is see an outbreak or something like that. And yeah, and I'm gonna discuss further on our event page, and once everyone is there, to try and maintain that social distancing as much as possible, to try and follow the guidelines of all of that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, you have any questions of these two leaders?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Crowley here, just a couple of things. First of all, Lily, I appreciate your explanation of the intentions of the rally that you guys are having, the partnerships, who you're having that with, and actual non-partnerships. Those were some of the concerns that people have voiced. I do have one question for our city attorney, actually, and hopefully he's available. And it's a hypothetical question, more just for a clarification, a legal clarification for the public. Blaine, are you available?
Yes, Commissioner.
So if we, hypothetically as a commission, if we did not want this event to happen, could we make the choice to not allow this to happen?
So what you're talking about here is a First Amendment right of free speech. And if the commission or any government entity were to attempt to prohibit the free exercise of someone's First Amendment rights, those are very strictly protected. Free speech in public spaces has probably the most protection of all speech, particularly if it's on public matters. And so when we talk about public spaces, we're talking about sidewalks, streets, parks, those places where the public could traditionally gather to engage in civic discourse. That receives the strictest scrutiny and the highest level of protection under our Supreme Court opinions in the United States. Governments can make reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on free speech. So you can say no going after 10 p.m. You can limit the noise level. You can say you can't shut down traffic in a busy street. But if you get into content-based restrictions, basically saying this governing body doesn't like what this group is saying, so we're going to say you can't gather, that would be struck down as an impermissible and essentially unconstitutional infringement on the First Amendment rights of those people who were gathering. In Ottawa, you don't have parade permits. You do have the standard traffic ordinance, which would require before anyone would obstruct a public street. So for example, a march that would go down a public street, those folks would have to meet with the chief of police, and the chief of police would determine whether or not they can accommodate that request. Okay, so that would be a content neutral, doesn't matter who it is or what they're saying, applies equally to everyone, kind of time, place, and manner restriction on that kind of speech or that kind of march. In this case, where the activities are confined to a public park, it would be the old strict scrutiny of time, place, and manner. So you can say this protest can't go past 10 o'clock, it can't be louder than X number of decibels, and you could have a reasonable restriction on crowd size if that were something that you were concerned about. But you could not say outright a peaceful gathering of people to exercise their First Amendment rights is prohibited just because you don't like the content of the speech or you don't want people to hear the message. That would be unconstitutional.
Commissioner Crowley here again. Thank you, Blaine. I appreciate the explanation, and I want to be 100% upfront with everybody. I absolutely believe in every citizen's constitutional rights. You have the constitutional right to civilly protest, and I would have never have ever been against this protest or this rally. Sorry, just as I would not be against somebody's right to vote if you weren't voting the right way I was voting. So that's what we built this America on, and I stand fully by everybody's rights.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Richard.
Richard United States City Manager, a couple of things. Commissioner Skidmore is having technical difficulty, and we've sent him a lifeline down to help him. So
hopefully
fixed.
he's going to be able to talk here in a minute. The
There
other
he is.
thing I'd like to say is that these two young adults, um, Lily and Natalie, approached us. They did not have to approach us. They could have gone down to the park, could have had their event, could have done that, just like we have had other organizations do that. But they wanted to do it right. And I want to emphasize, this is their community and they wanted to do it right. And this is what we want people to do, is do it right. And we have sat down, we're working through this, and they have done everything right to see that the community is protected and and our citizens understand the message. And I commend them for that.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor,
Mayor,
this is
go
Mike.
ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I just have a question for the ladies, Natalie and Lily. Will there be an open mic at this event?
So right now we just have those 5 speakers. Obviously we're not opposed to letting other people come up and say what they feel they need to say, because, you know, once again, First Amendment right, you have the right to say whatever you want to say, and we want everyone to have their voices be heard. So I definitely wouldn't be opposed to doing something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Tom Wagon, I would like to go back to what Commissioner Crowley had asked our attorney. And I got a question about, because there's been some concern and question, why couldn't we wait until and do this after pandemic? Could we as a city say, no, not during a pandemic, you can't have your free speech rights, or you can't assemble peacefully? City attorney on there?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, City Attorney Blaine Finch again. You're getting into kind of an intersection of free speech rights and emergency management. And so right now, Franklin County is in phase 3, and that allows for some eased restrictions on gathering sizes. There can be, and there have been in this state, restrictions on the size of gatherings due to the COVID pandemic. Those restrictions have usually been held to be constitutional, provided they are issued under a state's or a county's emergency management acts, and they follow the proper procedure in those acts. The city has not declared a state of emergency, and so if you wanted to restrict gathering sizes based on emergency or disaster related concerns, the city would need to declare a disaster, and then that would invoke your emergency powers to restrict gathering sizes in a time of infectious disease or a pandemic.
Okay. Thank you, Blaine. Are there any other questions or further discussion that commissioners want to have on this subject?
Mayor Wigan, this is Sarah Kaler speaking. I wonder if Lily and Natalie may not want to address, because I mean, it's Wednesday and this event is on Friday. If there are updates or specifics, where can they get that information, Natalie and Lily?
Yeah, so the biggest platform for us right now is our Facebook page where we have the event. So I updated the time and the details of where we will be meeting last night. And I made a separate post saying, you know, we have made some changes. Go ahead and check this out. So I would say that our Facebook page is the biggest place to see where we've made changes. So that would probably be the best thing for that.
Could you give the name of your Facebook page for the public?
Yes. Hold on 1 second. It is, so it's Ottawa, Kansas, and then dash Black Lives Matter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then furthermore, Lily and Natalie, I know that there's been some discussion, and I know there's concerns from our business owners. This is their livelihood. They put their blood, sweat, and tears into their business, and they're concerned. And would it be fair to say that in the next couple of days, you are going to attempt to reach as many business owners as you can personally?
Yeah, so our plan is to print out almost like a flyer with basically what Lily had said earlier of like, this is what this protest is, this is what it's not, and here's our contact info if you have any questions or concerns further than that.
Yes, and I just want to reiterate the fact that Natalie and I are both residents of this town. You know, I go to our high school, and the last thing that I would want to do is see our businesses go into harm's way. So that is one of the biggest things that we are not going to do at this event.
Yeah, and I would also like to say I work for a business owner in Ottawa, so yeah, that's definitely the last thing I would like to see any other businesses being put in harm's way whatsoever. So,
Well, both of you ladies have been extremely gracious, and I know that you are learning quickly about how this process works, but you are speedy learners, and we appreciate you moving it forward and being so open to collaborating with everyone.
Okay, the Mayor Tom Wygand, I think that's a great statement, Commissioner Kaler. These ladies have put a lot of work and time and effort into making this the best that it can be. So congratulate you for getting involved and being a leader in our community. Are there any other comments before we move on?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, real quick, Eric Crowley here, Commissioner. Ladies, one suggestion I had to maybe get some of that information out to the business owners is Maggie's Popcorn. Mary Rayleigh is the president of OMSA, Ottawa Main Street Association, and they might even be able to put that on their website too to help get that information out there to those business owners that maybe you're not able to get in contact with.
what did you say her name was again?
Her name's Mary Rayleigh.
Okay.
And she's the owner of Maggie's Popcorn.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Ottawa Main. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Natalie and Lily, and good luck. We'll see you Friday night.
Thank you.
Right. Oh,
Saturday night?
Friday night. Okay, moving on. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Any commissioner have any issues? Hearing none, we'll move to new business.
This is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. Agenda item number 10 is acceptance of the fiscal 2019 financial audit.
Sean Gordon of Gordon CPA, comment. The 2019 financial audit was prepared by the Gordon CPA firm. Is Sean with us?
Yes, I am here.
Give us a rundown on how we are.
Yeah, so I'll go over the financial statements, the audited financial statements that you've seen and that I presented last week as well, or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. So I'll just go through that real quick. And then if you have any questions after reviewing it, just let me know. So pages 1 and 2 is the independent auditor's report. Here we've issued on the second paragraph on page 2 an unmodified opinion on the regulatory basis of accounting. And that's the highest and cleanest opinion we're allowed to give a city under state guidelines. So it reflects very well on the financial management and internal control management of the city for the 2019 calendar year. And then flipping forward to page 3, this is the summary statement of receipts, expenditures, and unencumbered cash. Here is where you'll see just kind of a summary snapshot of all the city's funds, beginning cash in each fund, receipts, expenditures, and then ending cash in the right-hand column. At the very bottom of that right-hand column is total ending cash that the city is reporting at 12/31/2019. And then the next section forward is pages 4 through 14. These are the notes to the financial statements. Quite a bit of information is discussed here, including information on the city's accounting policies, information on the city's long-term debt, CAPER's retirement plans. Like I said, a lot of information discussed here as well. And then the final kind of section of the audit report is pages 15 through 40. And these are just more detailed breakouts for the commissioners to look at of each of those funds that was presented on page 3. more detailed breakouts and comparisons in most of those funds to the prior year, which would be 12/31/2018 activity. And then also a comparison to the budget that was adopted for 2019 as well. During the audit, we looked at a few statutes that the city finances or finance department is subject to, and there were no statutory violations for the audit period as well. So that reflects very well on following statutes as required by the state. There were 2 audit recommendations that we had this year, and we'll check up on those when we do the audit of the 2020 calendar year about 10 months from now. So if you have any questions, let me know. We had a good audit this year with Richard and Amy and Laurel and everybody else involved in the audit process.
Okay. Any questions, commissioners? This is Mayor Tom Wygand. Do you have, I know you've written some, or we have the staff in place that is what do I want to say, manageable, that is on top of it, are fully informed and able to look after the city's finances?
It appears to me as that is the case, yes. And like I said, it was a smooth audit process. The staff got everything that we needed pretty quickly to us, and was very responsive and seemed very knowledgeable in what we were looking for, what we were after. So yes, I would agree with your statement.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner.
I'd like to just point out that we did discuss this further during our study session, but at this time, I'd like to move to accept the 2019 financial audit.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second to that?
Commissioner Skidmore.
Commissioner Kaler. There you go. Commissioner Kaler will third it.
Okay, it's been moved, seconded, and thirded. Any other discussion?
No, but it does appear this Commissioner Kaler, we do have a fourth, so.
Yeah. Would the, if there's no more discussion, would the clerk call the roll?
Yes, this is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Wygand?
And I vote yes too. Motion carried unanimously. Item 11.
This is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. Agenda item 11, authorization for grant agreement and signatures for fund requests with the State of Kansas Department of Commerce for Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, Economic Development, CV-19 funds.
The city was awarded $132,000 in grant funds. Staff will outline details of the grant. Wendy Lee, would you make your presentation of this?
Sure. We've discussed this project at length, both before we applied for the funding and at the 2 study sessions most recently, about the fact that we were awarded funding. We weren't awarded the funding that we had hoped to receive, but it still enables us with $132,000 to put funds back into our local businesses through the Community Development Block Grant Program. The one of the things that we've discussed several times also is that we had local revolving loan fund programs, money, and we now have applications pending that, if they were all successful, would exhaust those funds. In fact, one was just handed to me. So, and that wasn't, we just have to go through them. So I don't know where they stand. And some of them we hope to, of course, retain for this grant and have them go through this new process. While the revolving loan fund program and the CV program are similar, there are a few differences. And so what we have in the next item is kind of talks about that. But this first item is just really to formalize the governing body's authorization to formalize our relationship with the state of Kansas in receiving these funds, that we will abide by their regulations and the federal ones that go along with any community development block grant. We've done this before, whether it's, and in fact, we've done it with things that aren't even CDBG grants when we did neighborhood stabilization. Many of those documents are the same each time. Commerce is responsible in making sure that those things fall into the actual grant agreement. In an overall sense, one of the things that will happen with this is that we will have a little bit more oversight in these monies because they aren't the local revolving loan fund dollars. We pretty much have been treating it the same way, but there will be additional checklists that have to happen and additional steps. So the grant agreement specifies our relationship. Along with that, we have some signatures which are required or authorized signatures so that we can withdraw the funds down once we're allowed to for each project. We have a grant administrator for this project, Susan Gailmore, who has been our grant administrator on several other grants with Commerce and Housing. And so we're confident that she will enable us to comply with all of the regulations and additional paperwork needs that we will have with this grant. Those funds to pay her are not coming out of this $132,000. You have the budget there. We initially had budgeted $15,000 for administration. Because the grant dollars have been lowered, what we will spend for administration will also lower down to $6,600 at this point. We're of course hopeful that there could be an opportunity to increase this grant award as things continue on. Well, we'd like first for there not to be a need, but if there is a continued need and the federal government allocates more funds that then is allocated this way, we would hope to receive some additional funds. And so it's possible that we would come back to you at that time.
Okay.
The budget is attached, so the whole 132 would be granted out with the other funds for the administration paid for out of the city's economic development category. And the signatures are for me, my administrative assistant, Charlotte Newkirk, the assistant finance director, Laurel Gimzo, and Richard Neinstead, the city manager. And those are the two documents we would like to have authorization for today.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. This is Mayor Tom Wygant asking the other commissioners, have you got any questions of Wendy? If not, I would like to hear a motion.
Mr. Mayor, this is Sarah Kaler speaking, and I would move that we approve the item that is listed in our, in our agenda regarding the CDBG funds for economic development.
Okay.
Commissioner Crowder will second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I guess we'll do a roll call.
This is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. How do you vote, Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Wygand?
And I vote yes, motion carries. Item 12.
This is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. Agenda item 12, guidelines for community development block grant, CDBG, CV grant funds.
This document outlines the requirements for grant fund distribution. Wendy?
Mr. Mayor, and I'm sorry, I failed to identify myself in that last presentation. Wendy Lee, Director of Community Development. The guidelines are really originate underneath the guidelines we've used for both the city's revolving loan fund as well as the American Eagle loan fund with a few tweaks. Because we're not doing loans, we had taken that language out. As I shared with you on Monday, we want to be sure that this complies with the new grant funds. Just as a broader overview, in case someone's thinking about applying for these funds, the grants are used for working capital. That includes rent, inventory, utilities, insurance, salaries and wages. And then if you are following along in the document, you'll see the subject to a couple of other things. One, that if they have received other funding, PPP as an example, for payroll, then they would not be able to use the same payroll expenses to apply for this funding. If that payroll was limited to 1 month and they had 2 additional months after that, then they may be eligible in that way. But for the same period in time, we would probably describe it as double dipping. There are provisions to avoid that. All applicants must have all members of their employees, all payroll people paid by payroll, complete the job certification form. And then all of those who are employees, 51% of those persons would have to be in the LMI category for those retained jobs. The change that I caught as we were discussing on Monday, and I didn't get a chance to make until yesterday, was I had in item C a comment that the maximum grant is no more than $35,000 in granted funds per job retained. This funding breaks those jobs and maximums just a little bit differently. And I had that in there too, but they were leaving themselves open for a conflict. I had put that in E and really should have addressed it in C. So I fixed that in the guidelines that were sent back out to you. Micro grants are for those with 1 to 5 employees. And the FTE on that, if it's 1 to 5 full-time employees, they can actually request up to $25,000 for each FTE, but it's capped at $30,000 for each business. So by having that 35 in there before, it's a little misleading. Businesses with 6 to 50 employees are eligible up to the same 35,000 FTE, but with a maximum per business of 50,000. And the reason for that is typically with all economic development grants, we say a job is, you can apply for up to $35,000 per job. That's true with our local revolving loan funds as well. But you all elected to sort of say, look, if they want more than 20,000, they're going to come to the city commission. We want to try and distribute the funds more broadly. That's a similar statement basically by how they've created these new rules. In order to say, look, we want a max at any one given business of 30,000 if it's 1 to 5 employees, or a max of 50,000 if it's 6 to 50. The rest of the language didn't change, and I can kind of tell you a little more of that. Again, if they've had other funds, they can't double dip. One of the other distinct differences with the new grant going forward is that all applications will come to the governing body for review. If there's any proprietary information or their financials, those will be covered at an executive session. Those are not disclosable to the public, but your process of considering them and approving them is a part of what would be in the public forum. Of course, we continue to have statements about no discrimination, and that as I've worded it here, unless you have other cause, grant applications will be reviewed for approval in the order in which they are received. And that interpretation is when a complete application is received. You can't just turn in one page and mark the time. You've got to have a complete application in. So that's my summary of the guidelines. We'd like your approval on that because that also goes up to the state of Kansas. If they have concerns about anything, then we might have to bring it back, but they are asking for how are you going to do this. Some communities are electing to put the cap possibly lower. Some may be saying we're going to focus on a particular type of business. It could be service or retail or what have you. But because you haven't had any of those kinds of constraints in our process thus far, we did not draft anything like that in these guidelines.
Thank you, Wendy. It does seem like our requests for funding has been very reasonable and needed, so that's a good thing. Any comments or questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen, I've got a question for Ms. Lee. I was reading through the guidelines of the that you presented, and item C Are the FTE limits, are they different for a micro business as a micro grant as compared to a regular grant? It looks like a micro grant is up to 25,000 per FTE, and the other grant is 35,000 per FTE.
Oh, yes, you're right. That's right. And the maximum you can get in a micro is 30.
Okay.
So far, there's only a few. Well, we started off with a number of sole proprietors, but we have really in the last several weeks had a number of employees, and I hope to give you an update on this on Monday. How many of different kinds of businesses, sole proprietors versus how many of employees, and we really have had a full range in the last several weeks of 2 or 3 people all the way up to, I think we have one sitting here that is around 40.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners?
Mayor Wygant.
Yes, Commissioner Kaler.
This is Commissioner Kaler speaking. I would move that we approve the guidelines for the Community Development Block Grant grant funds.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Jorgensen seconds the motion.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? There being none, I call for the vote.
This is Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. How do you vote, Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Mayor Wygant?
And I vote yes to motion carried. Item 13.
City Clerk Amy Finch speaking. Agenda item 13, request for approval of resolution to set the time, date, and place for condemnation hearing of mobile home at 931 East 9th Street.
This resolution provides notice of hearing to consider condemnation of a mobile home at 931 East 9th Street for Wednesday on August 5th, 2020 at 7 p.m. We have a series of these that we covered at length at Monday's meeting. Are there any comments or questions of the commissioners before we move forward and do these individually? Hearing none, I would call for a motion.
I think Mayor Wygant,
Yes.
you're calling for a motion for each individual
That's
property, correct?
That's correct. For item 12 or 13.
Great. And you are correct. We have gone through these in the last 2 weeks, and anybody who might be watching this can go back to our study session agenda from Monday and the Monday before, and there are pictures and documents and all kinds of stuff, or watch the video back again. I'm saying that I would make a motion to approve a resolution that sets a condemnation hearing for the property at for the structure at 931 East 9th Street.
Commissioner Crowley will second.
Been moved and seconded. No further discussion. I call for the vote.
Amy Finch, City Clerk speaking. How do you vote, Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Mayor Wygand?
And I vote yes to motion carried. Item 14.
City Clerk Amy Finch speaking. Agenda item 14. Request for approval of resolution to set the time, date, and place for condemnation hearing of a single-family structure at 133 South Cedar Street.
This resolution provides notice of a hearing to consider condemnation of a single-family structure at 133 South Cedar Street for Wednesday on August 5th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore, yeah, I will make the motion that we approve item number 14, and somewhere we need to include the place of the condemnation hearing. I assume they'd be here in City Hall.
Commissioner Kaler, second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? If there are none, I call for the vote.
City Clerk Amy Finch speaking. How do you vote? How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Weigand?
Yes. Motion carried. Item 15.
City Clerk Amy Finch speaking. Agenda item 15, request for approval of resolution to set the time, date, and place for condemnation hearing of a single-family structure at 202 South Locust Street.
This resolution provides notice of hearing to consider condemnation of a single-family structure at 202 South Locust Street for Wednesday on August 5th, 2020 at 7 p.m.
Mr.
Any
Mayor,
questions, discussion, or a motion?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner
Commissioner
Crowley,
Crowley.
I'll make the motion to approve item 15 on our agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Commissioner Taylor will second.
Been moved and seconded. I call for the vote.
City Clerk Amy Finch, how do you vote, Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Pardon me, yes.
Mayor Weigand?
I vote yes too. Motion carried unanimously. Item 16.
City Clerk Amy Finch speaking. Agenda item 16, request for approval of resolution to set the time, date, and place for condemnation hearing of a single-family structure at 822 South Poplar Street.
This resolution provides notice of hearing to consider condemnation of a single-family structure at 822 South Poplar Street for Wednesday on August 5th, 2020 at 7 p.m.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
this is Commissioner Taylor speaking. I would move that we set, or I would move to approve the resolution for the condemnation hearing for the property located at 822 South Poplar.
Commissioner Crowley will second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote.
City Clerk Amy Finch speaking. How do you vote, Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Mayor Weigand?
I vote yes too. Motion carried unanimously. Item 17.
City Clerk Amy Finch speaking. Agenda item 17, request for approval of resolution to set the time, date, and place for condemnation hearing of a single-family structure at 825 South Poplar Street.
This resolution provides notice of hearing to consider condemnation of a single-family structure at 825 South Poplar Street for Wednesday on August 5th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Any discussion? I would call for a motion.
Mr.
Commissioner
Mayor,
Crowley will make the motion to approve item 17.
Commissioner Crowley made the motion. Is there a second?
Commissioner Jorgensen seconds.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I call for the vote. I call for the vote.
I apologize. I muted myself. City Clerk
Okay.
speaking. How do you vote, Commissioner Jorgensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Mayor Weigand?
I vote yes too. Motion carries. I have these are all for at 7 o'clock. I'm assuming we will handle the hearings separately though. If someone wants to speak on certain property, we will speak on that certain property during that hearing and then have another hearing. Is that correct?
Mayor Weigand?
Yes.
This Commissioner Taylor speaking. I believe that's how we generally proceed with it. And it may want to be noted that this is just one of many steps that we will take. None of these properties that are listed in our agenda right now are looking to be condemned tomorrow. This is a process in which we take, and we take very, or at least myself, and I don't want to speak for any of you on the meeting, but take very, very seriously.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
this is Wendy Lee,
Wendy.
Community Development Director. Yes, our obligation is to hold a hearing per each item. We will present whatever information at that time about why staff has the recommendation that they do. And then there's an opportunity for neighbors, the owner themselves, the broader public, anyone to speak about that particular address, or all of them if they want to speak at each one. But certainly, given that one of them came about because of petitioners, I would expect that we would have public available, and I'll always hope that the owners make the time to communicate with us and with you during that hearing.
okay. Thank you, Wendy.
Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you, commissioners. Yes, Mike.
Skidmore, I just a point of clarification. I suppose we'll have to wait till we get closer to the date of August 5th to determine where will we be meeting, whether we'll be have an open meeting in City Hall or do it by Zoom. I guess we don't know at this point.
To be
Mayor?
decided.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Wendy.
This is Wendy Lee, again, Community Development Director. If we are still meeting by Zoom, I know that what we did for the public hearings we held for the Planning Commission is we set up a station in the study session room where members of the public could come and sit socially distanced away from each other and go to the podium where there was a computer there so that they could join that way if they didn't have the technology personally. So I'm sure if we are in that situation, we'd be happy to make that available again.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
Mr.
Yes.
Mayor, Richie Nine said, "See, man, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because I thought at the last study session where we talked about this, there was a commitment to working ourselves back into the commission room in July. Is that right?"
This is
I think we had
Commissioner-
had discussed that possibility, but we had not made a decision yet.
This is Commissioner Kaler speaking. I thought we had decided to come back in July and work like a hybrid. If individuals don't feel comfortable being there, then we will make other arrangements, but that we were going to begin opening up City Hall and being socially distant and being appropriate, but setting a good example, but also being present if we're able to do so.
Okay, is that at the first study session in July, or did we set a date?
Well, commissioners, I interpreted that to mean that on July 6th, before then, we would have the hybrid meeting. We would set it up for those who want to be there, and we would also be able to do Zoom. So unless we are back into a COVID situation where we need to do more social distancing and not do the meeting in person. I'm assuming that the directive given to us was that we would start that on the first study session in July.
Very good.
Richard? This is City Clerk Amy Finch speaking. Just to note, there is a regular commission meeting scheduled for July 1st at 7 p.m.
This is
I
Commissioner
forgot all
Kaler.
about that.
I guess I thought that we were coming back July 1st, and maybe I was wrong. We clarify that now.
That would be helpful if you would clarify if you want to come back in July 1st or come back in July 6th.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner.
Commissioner Jorgensen speaking. It was my understanding that July 1st was the date certain that we planned on coming back together.
Commissioner Crowley here. I was under the same assumption too, and I'm glad we're reviewing this because if not, I would have been sitting there by myself probably.
Never, Commissioner Crowley.
I'd have been zooming. This is Mayor Wygand. We are then have the option, I guess, to attending in person July 1st at the regular city commission meeting. And that's going to be an evening meeting, right?
That's correct.
We're up to item 18, report by the city manager. Richard?
So commissioners, I want to follow up on a couple of things. I want to follow up on the setting on the properties you just dealt with. And I want to reiterate to the public, and I want to reiterate to those who have ownership of this property, if they are listening and if their neighbors care to tell them that in the next 2 months, they can actually move forward to doing what they have to do after they come in to community development, get the proper permits, get the proper contractors. But there is nothing that stops them in the next 2 months taking care of the situation, tearing down the house, repairing the house. And that would actually be of great benefit to the taxpayers of this community, because in the end, they are the ones who have to pay for property like this when you condemn it and we have to take some action. So I just want to reiterate that to our citizens that are listening, that this is still in the hands of the property owners. So, okay.
Richard,
Go ahead.
may I add and remind that these properties, all of these properties have been a concern to the city for up to 10 years of not being occupied, not being cared for. And so we've been very diligent and very understanding of property rights. It's just that if they become a property, a nuisance to the city and a liability to the neighbors, we didn't act quickly, and we're actually giving the property owners the time and a chance to make it right.
Well, there is an interesting parallel here between the two young adults that were with us and people who come to us about properties who want us to abrogate somebody's constitutional rights. And there are rights involved with the property, and we follow a legal procedure. You cannot just go in and seize the property, unless, of course, you're the IRS and they have some different rules. But we cannot go in and seize property. What we have to do is follow a constitutional process. So oftentimes neighborhoods get frustrated, citizens get frustrated, because why can't you go just go tear it down? And unfortunately, but fortunately for our citizenry, it just does not work that way. So the other thing I want to talk about, again, is to reiterate to our citizens that Lily and Natalie, these two young adults, and they are adults, came to us, made a contact, and allowed us the opportunity to sit down with them and help ensure that there is a safe, peaceful demonstration. And I don't want people to lose sight of what this great country does afford us. It affords us a chance to speak our mind, and it affords us a chance to demonstrate peacefully and not harm others with our message. And if we don't like that message, people still have a constitutional right to say it. I remember many years ago, and many of you might also remember too, when the American Nazi Party went to do a demonstration in Skokie, Illinois, and that's a suburb of Chicago. And they deliberately picked that suburb because there were, I think, if I remember right, there was a synagogue and a lot of Jewish residents, and it caused a lot of pain. That flag, that cause caused a lot of pain. And it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, while the message is repugnant, they have a constitutional right to peacefully demonstrate on public property. So you have messages on both sides of the extreme, and it is not often that we as Americans get to celebrate what our Constitution protects us from, and it protects us from our government saying you can't do this. So that's my homily for today.
Very well said and important message. Reports by city commissioners. Commissioner Jorgensen.
Actually, it may surprise you, I do have something to say today. Actually, 4 things to say.
Great.
First off, I also want to congratulate the 2 young ladies that came before our meeting today and to express their viewpoints, and also to talk about the rally that's going to be happening on this Friday. Ottawa has had peaceful demonstrations in the past, whether it be the Westboro Baptist Church that picketed a service member's funeral, the Patriot Guard that protected the family of that fallen soldier from seeing those picketers, or whatever it be. So it is their constitutional right, and I congratulate these young ladies for stepping up for something that they believe and something that they see as being an injustice in our community, and several of our community members do as well. Definitely. Also, I'd like to congratulate the city staff, the city financial staff, on a clean audit. This is hard work. It is a work that they do every day. This is the report card for them that they get on an annual basis. Not very many other jobs within the community or within city government have a report card such as this that is made public. And so it is hard work. There is a lot of controls that have to be put in place, and it's a joint effort from all city staff. So congratulations on the clean audit this year. I'd also like, I see that Michael Hafley is on the phone, or on the meeting as well. I had a citizen compliment that came to me, and this citizen may come forward in the future, but in case he does not, I want to make the Public Works folks aware of this. They had a 3rd and Elm Street, and many of you will remember that Elm Street is a brick street, and the residents are very proud of that brick street. And at one point earlier in my tenure, the citizens along the street petitioned to keep that as a brick street, not have it be asphalted over. But at 3rd and Elm, there was something that caused the bricks to heave at that intersection. And instead of going in and removing the bricks and putting an asphalt patch on it, our public works folks went in and did a lot of hand labor to clear out the hump and put sand bed down and then relay the bricks back in that intersection. It's probably something that they did not enjoy doing during the heat and so forth, but the result was very good, and the residents in that area appreciate the fact that area was repaired with the original materials instead of going back with an asphalt patch. And finally, I would like to comment again on the census. Seems like years ago that we started talking about the census, and all of us should have received a postcard in the mail. I completed my census online shortly after receiving that postcard, and I hope that everybody that's attending this meeting did as well. Next week is Census Week, and I saw that Community Development Director Wendy Lee was wearing a I Count sticker earlier today. There she is. She's modeling it. And we have a supply of these stickers that I am going to challenge the city commissioners to wear next week, and and actually encourage our citizens to fill out the survey and count. Right now, we're about between 67 and 70% completed within our community. There, Richard has a whole strip of them. We're 67%, and that's about 2/3. So, you know, when we're talking a community of 12 to 13,000 people, that's a significant number of people that have not been counted so far. And we talked a lot about the Constitution earlier. The census is a part of the Constitution. It calls for a count of the citizens every 10 years. And if you're an American and support the Constitution, by golly, complete your census and get it sent in. There's a whole bunch of funding that is tied to populations, and it works out to about $50,000 per year per citizen. And so, if federal funding and if your roads, your school lunches, and other federal programs are important to you, complete the census and get it back, and it'll prevent people from having to go door to door and contacting those homes that have not completed the information. So that's my homily for today, and encouragement. But we'll get those stickers out to the rest of the commissioners, and I challenge you to wear them next week. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Jorgensen. You made great use of your 2 minutes. Appreciate that. Commissioner Skidmore.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Jorgensen. He said a lot of the things that I was going to say, but he said them better than I could have. So thanks, Commissioner Jorgensen, for saying those things. Just one thing to add, our downtown Main Street corner beautification project is taking place. A lot of volunteers spent a lot of time last 2 weekends in the heat. Hard work out there getting those corners looking nice again. So I just want to say thanks for all the volunteers and the people leading that project.
Thank you. Commissioner Crowley?
Have no report.
Commissioner Kaler?
I'd like to yield part of my 2 minutes to what Commissioner Jorgensen took, and I'm only going to take 30 seconds. The one thing that I do want to mention, I know we've talked about this in the last several meetings, where we have positions on boards and opportunities to step up. And I think that we have seen this week, there has been in the past a complaint about a void of leadership. And these two young ladies that have come forward are a prime example of leadership that is growing within our community, and I'm extremely proud of them. I would also want to say that if you're listening to this and you're thinking, why is this not happening? Why is this not happening? Volunteer, join one of our boards, ask to be a part of it. If you're a part of the solution, we want you as a part of moving Ottawa forward. The rest of my time goes to Commissioner Jorgensen.
Thank you, Commissioner Kaler. Thank you, commissioners. The mayor also congratulations to staff on the clean audit and getting through that with expediency and satisfaction of doing a great job. The census, of course, is important. We need to be counted, and it means money. It means a lot to our communities to know what our population really is. As far as the Friday night rally, I do commend the leadership that exhibited by the two young ladies and those involved in creating a peaceful, safe rally on an important issue. My only concern is I don't want to go into quarantine after it. So I encourage everyone to wear their masks, social distance as much as possible, but participate to the fullest as possible. With that, if there's nothing else, we will talk about. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, Richard Ninestead, City Manager. Sorry to interrupt you. I forgot this, but I might ask Chief Weingartner if he wants to address the commission and the citizens with anything.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, this is Adam Weingartner, Police Chief for the Ottawa Police Departments. And I just want to talk about a few items specific to Friday's planned events and then just some other key points to kind of wrap everything up and bring it together for this governing body, this community, and anyone who may still have questions. I also echo all of the praise and thanks for the group coordinating these and working together to make these events a safe, lawful, and peaceful assemble. Commissioner Kaler hit it on the head, and she stole my good point right away. And several weeks ago, I released a public statement regarding a law enforcement incident that's kind of really sparked where we are today. And I don't see it stopping anytime soon. This idea, concept, discussion has momentum. And I think many in our country are capitalizing on that momentum to address issues that they need to. And in some of those, in that public statement was a link to a video that I created with some of our key community partners that this department works with closely that touches a broad spectrum of the community. And I called that a microcosm of our society. Within each of our businesses are members of our community, members of other communities who come here to work every single day, that come from different backgrounds, from all sorts of different things, whether that's race, ethnicity, socioeconomic. And what we can do in Ottawa and what we are doing is create a model for other communities to see on how you can do difficult conversations well, while keeping it peaceful, keeping it lawful, and understanding why other people may have some concerns on either ends of these spectrums. So in that meeting, I said we had to have a call to action. This is part of that call to action. In that statement, I said the police department was going to continue the discussions about the police and our relationship with the community. I can assure you those conversations have taken place every single day since that, with many different people and many different groups, and we are being as responsive as we can, and will continue to do so. Many things happen in the background for planning any of these events, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of staff to resource it correctly to make sure that we can pull off the safe event. You know, we're very blessed every September to have two very large community events back to back, the tractor show and the car show. Those events put stress on many of our city departments to pull off safely, but it's a great exercise for us every single year to help us ensure that we have all of the things we need to keep the community safe. And we do that year after year after year. I want you to, I'm gonna be looking away from the monitor to my screen. Sorry if it looks like I may be a little distracted. I'm not, but I want to cover some key points, and using Zoom's a little bit more difficult than me printing it out and presenting to you in front of the camera. But I want you to know that the department has received a few concerns and calls about the events Friday. So far, the police department has received 2 phone calls. Both of those came to my desk this morning, which I have not yet had a chance to return because I've been on Zoom calls and meetings, but I plan to do that as soon as I get off here. And I would just encourage anyone in the community that if you have questions about the events, the safety of those events, what plans we have in place, what steps we're going to take to make sure that everyone is safe, to please contact us. Social media is a great way to spread message, but it's also a great way to spread misinformation. It's a great way to add concern where it doesn't need to be. My role, my job is to address those concerns because they are valid if people are making them, and hopefully explain them in a way that after the conversation, they feel confident that we can pull this off in a safe way. As part of that discussion that I had a few weeks ago, I said there was going to be some other stuff coming out. And as many of you know, I was notably absent last week to deal with a personal family issue in another state. And please don't take my my silence as ignorance to the events that were going on. I was doing my best to stay connected by email, phone, and video to the extent possible, and likely would have had some of this released had I been here. But I'm preparing a press release to send out because I know that some people don't watch all of these public meetings. They don't listen to COFO, which I did an interview yesterday with COFO and address the event plan for Friday. They may not read our Ottawa Herald paper, which distributes great information to our community. And they may also not see some of the other avenues. So here's another one. We created a new email address that the public is can respond to us quickly, is called askopd@ottawaks.gov. That's askopd@ottawaks.gov. We have a generic email address and we use that for many business reasons. So when I was working through this a few weeks ago, I thought I wanted a way and another easy acronym for the public to remember, like, hey, I got a question for the police department. How do I do that? So we'll have a link on our website eventually, but the email address is active now. We will receive those emails upon receipt, and we will respond to them when we can. It is not monitored 24 hours a day. It is not a way to request emergency assistance. 911 is still the only way to do that. So I hope that after only receiving a few phone calls so far, that maybe this will increase the ability for the public to contact us about having those questions and concerns. Additionally, I'd like to ask anyone in the community, if you have concerns or you see or hear about suspicious activity, to please report it to the police department and somebody will respond and investigate. Many people saw of some of these events around the country where there was projectiles being staged, and almost some of those were tips to the police department from the public. You are our eyes and ears, and we need your help to make sure that we can keep the event safe. I thank you for doing that in the past, and I'm going to ask you to do it again in the future. Last night, the president released an executive order with several steps to address the safe policing for safe communities. And while I have not had an opportunity yet to read every single line of the executive orders, I quickly read the bulleted comments. And I'm happy to report that this police department has, for many years, already been doing many of the things that were outlined. In that public statement I released, it addressed some of the concerns we had heard from the public and maybe the public outside of Ottawa. So a national conversation about what police departments do to address very serious incidents. And I was very pleased to know that our department had already been doing those things and will continue to do those things. And I want the public to know that you can trust us to be open and transparent as much as we can be, but there will be some things that we can't and shouldn't say or do. And those are usually lawful and legal reasons that we communicate with our city attorney about, and we'll release those that information when we can and are able to. And I just wanted to say to anyone who has questions about Friday, we're working with our partners with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, our Emergency Management Office, and our EMS to make sure that any event in Ottawa is safe, and this one is no different. I'm hearing the business owners' concerns. There are several of us that are addressing those concerns. I'll be sending this information to the Chamber of Commerce and the Main Street Association to send out to their membership as another easy way to get that message out. And I likely would have been doing that a lot sooner last week had I been around, but I'm just trying to play catch up a little bit. And events are unfolding and developing very quickly. But just know that our officers will be out. Our officers will be keeping everyone safe. And we'll be there to come up and talk to in a calm and respectful manner. And we're going to have a great event this weekend. And we're going to show the rest of the world and the communities how we can do this correctly. Thank you for the time. Thank you for all of your support that you provided to this police department and all of the officers that will be out there working. And just know we're here to hear your concerns and look forward to more of these conversations taking place with many parts of our community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Very good. You run a very professional organization and have the community in mind at every turn. And thank you, Richard, for asking the chief to speak. I regret I had overlooked that. With that, we will go. Richard, were you through? You were through with your report. We had this commissioners, so we're going to go to our announcements, which are the next study session will be Monday, June 22nd, 4 o'clock, via Zoom again. And then the study session, June 29th, will also be at Zoom at 4 o'clock. And then July 1, our regular meeting will be at 7 p.m. and hopefully in City Hall or by Zoom as necessary. And July 3rd, we are going to Well, July 4th, of course, the holiday, the offices will be closed. If there's nothing else to come before this meeting, I would adjourn this meeting at 11:21. Thank you all. Be safe.